At 92 years old, the man had ruled Zingola longer than some mountains had held their mist. His voice no longer roared in public, but his shadow still walked in every office. He had survived 7 coups, and yet here he was announcing his 44th bid for presidency. There in old Zingola proverb, when a snake lives too long in a house, it learns to whisper like the owner. Ndimba Muwambe had mastered whispering. In the inner chambers of the shrine of continuity, hidden beneath the president lodge, 7 skulls sat on the stone table. The priest of the shrine, Mama Etongwe, stood barefoot. "You have called again," she said, pouring din into the fire. President Ndiba nodded weakly. "I must win again. This land was born for me. The spirits will ask their price. One more head." "Oh," she smiled. The boy, "Zingola is not a kingdom. Let the old lion rest." In Zingola, the cock does not crow until the spirits nod. It was election season again and the land was restless. The Harmattan had arrived too early, choking the city with dusk and omen. Old women stared into the sky and spat on the ground. "This year," they said, "blood will argue with blood." In the capital city of Mbanga, banners of the National Salvation Front flapped in the dry wind like ghosts. Red, green, and black flags stretched from roundabouts to rooftops. Slogans screamed from walls. "One Zingola, one leader, and one vote experience. Vote stability." The face of President Ndimba Muwambe shriveled, firm, fossilized, looked down on everyone. At 92 years old, the man had ruled Zingola longer than some mountains had held their mist. His voice no longer roared in public, but his shadow still walked in every office, courtroom, and soldier's heart. He had survived 7 coups, 5 international sanctions, and 1 stroke, and yet here he was announcing his 44th bid for presidency, backed by pastors, chiefs, colonels, and things that didn't speak with mouths. There in old Zingola proverb, when a snake lives too long in a house, it learns to whisper like the owner. Ndimba Muwambe had mastered whispering. In the inner chambers of the shrine of continuity, hidden beneath the president lodge, 7 skulls sat on the stone table, each marked with the name of a year Zingola bled. 1984, 1999, 2001, 2008, 2016, and 2020. And the 7th still blank. The priest of the shrine, Mama Etongwe, stood barefoot, her robe soaked in a camphor and goat milk. Her face was tattooed with black lines. Her eyes were 2 caves without bottom. "You have called again," she said, pouring gin into the fire. "Your crown hungers." President Ndiba nodded weakly from his chair of redwood. "I must win again. This land was born for me. The spirits will ask their price," she said. "I am ready." She touched the blank skull. "One more head." Ndiba did not flinch. "Oh," she smiled. The boy was Ntembe Ayamba, a 36 years old teacher turned revolution, slim, sharp-tongued, and beloved by the youth. Ayaba had founded the New River Movement, NROM, a ragtag party of young firebrands preaching justice, accountability, and the end of permanent presidency. Ayaba grew up in the ghettos of Ndo. Watching soldiers drag his father out at midnight, his mother died whispering, "Don't fear ghosts, fear the men who commanded them." Now, he stood on podiums across the country, microphone in hand, and shouting, "Zingola is not a kingdom. Let the old lion rest." The people listened, especially the youth. The president's advisors were worried, the shrine furious. Mama Etongwe told the president, "This one is born of thunder. If you do not take him, he will take you." Meanwhile, strange things began happening. In Boma, a PFNC region chairman died in his sleep, eyes open, mouth full of black sand. In Mungwe, 2 campaigns buses crashed into a dry river at the same hour. In Diba's hometown of Eyala, lightning struck the village square 3 days in a row. The earth was grumbling. But Diba Muwambe moved with the confidence of a python crossing a footpath, slow, deliberate, and sure no one would stop him. He visited churches, kissed babies, danced stiffly to drums, but beneath his agbada, he wore a belt sewn with eagle feathers and crocodile teeth, protection from both ballot and bullet. In secret, the Council of the Red Moon met under the sacred baobab in the forest of Kikele. They were elders, seers, and former warriors, now reduced to whispers in a land that had forgotten them. They had seen the signs. "The spirits are restless," said the oldest, Papa Munongo. "The river refuses to sleep." "The shrine has taken too much," said another. "7 heads, that is not politics. That is war with the ancestors." "But who will challenge the god in human skin?" a younger voice asked. Silence. Then Papa Munongo said, "The boy." Ntembe Ayaba knew he was being followed. Men in tinted SUVs watched his rallies. His phone made strange sounds at night. He had moved his mother to Ghana. He changed cars every 3 days, but still something felt wrong. Then came the dream. He stood in dry field facing a giant old man whose eyes bled fire. Around them, 7 headless bodies danced in a circle, chanting his name. The man pointed at him and roared, "Your head will crown me." He woke up sweating. His grandmother, a blind herbalist from Bangembe, listened to his vision and spat twice. "They are hunting you," she said, "but you are not meat." "What should I do?" Ayaba asked. "Do what your father did," she said. "Speak to the land." Across Zingola, the people were rising, slowly, angrily. Fuel was scarce, hospitals rotted, roads collapsed, electricity came and went like a cheating lover, and yet President Diba's party promised a new dawn. In the bars of Molo, men muttered over bottles of Burukutu. "This old man is not ruling anymore, he's hunting." In the saloons of Zembe, women whispered, "The ballot boxes are full before voting starts. The devil lives in ink now." And in university hostels from Bakiri to Ngoma, students printed t-shirts that read, "7 heads, no more." But power does not surrender softly. Diba Muwambe called his generals. "They must not speak of 7 heads," he said. "Should we arrest?" asked General Ikoka. "No," the president said, tapping his forehead. Erase them." In Zingola, when a drum breaks, the dancer must decide whether to continue or flee. The president's circle thought Ntembe Ayaba would flee, that the fear of death would turn him into another exile story, a forgotten flame blown out by state's cold wind, but Ayaba didn't flee. He doubled his allies, took his speeches deeper into the villages, the ghettos, the markets. He no longer spoke with fire. He spoke like rain on a tin roof, constant, undeniable. "This nation is a tree strangled by its own roots," he said in Ebule. "We will either cut the rod or be buried with it," he told youth in Bikoko. And the people listened, not with applause, but with silence. That sacred silence of a people whose anger had matured into resolve. The attempt on his life came on a Tuesday. He was traveling from a student rally in Gombe, riding in a borrowed Prado when the road suddenly exploded. 3 masked gunmen opened fire on the convoy. His driver died instantly. 2 volunteers were dragged out and shot. Ayaba escaped into a maize field, blood on his cheek, 1 shoe gone, panting like a haunted animal. He spent the night hiding in a village lantern guarded by a deaf farmer who didn't even recognize him. By morning, he had sent out a voice note. "I am alive, but Zingola is dying." That audio flew across country like a plague of locusts. In Banga, President Diba Muwambe watched the security briefing with an expression older than stone, no rage, no surprise, just a sign, like a god tired of praying. "You said he would be finished," he told General Okoka. The general bowed trembling. "He vanished like smoke, Your Excellency." "We will find him." Diba looked out the window. Thunder cracked across the clear sky. "You don't find smoke," he muttered. "You follow fire that made it." In the underground shrine of continuity, Mama Etongwe wailed. The seventh score had cracked. "This boy is protected," she said, cycling the altar. "Someone buried his name beneath the rain. He has the tongue of a prophet and the skin of a ghost." The fire dimmed. "The sacrifice has failed. He must be taken differently." The president was summoned again. This time, he came at midnight. He looked older than ever. His walking stick trembled. His agbada smelled of sweat and fear. "What must I do?" he asked. The priestess did not look at him. She stared at the cracked score, the blank name. "You must trade something greater now." "What?" "Your own blood." Diba froze. "My son?" "No, the people." By the next week, chaos had a new address: Zingola. Markets were attacked by unknown gunmen. Opposition rallies were banned for security. Internet blackouts swept through regions where Ayaba had support. Journalists were detained. Pastors were paid. Traditional rulers summoned. A fire broke out in the National Archive. No one knew what was lost, or rather, no one was allowed to remember. Then came the Green Massacre. In a small town called Green Hollow, 27 youths holding candles for peace were shot at dawn by soldiers. The government said it was an unfortunate accident. Ayaba called it what it was: blood sacrifice. In the midst of all this, revelation struck. In the ghetto slum of Zembani, a retired grave digger named Tombil Mbwe came forward with a story that cracked the country's soul like dry wood. He had buried 7 original heads. They brought them wrapped in white cloths, stitched in silence. Tombil said in a video secretly posted online. One had dreadlocks, one was a nun, one was a boy with a Bible in his hand. I asked no questions, but I remember the smell. It wasn't death, it was betrayal. The footage went viral. Within hours it was blocked, but not before it seeded a dangerous truth. Zingola began asking, what really fed this presidency? Back at the shrine of continuity, Mama Etongwe began to fall ill. The fire refused to burn. The skull began to sweat. The names etched on the bones grew faint. One night, she dreamt of a throne sinking into the ground, pulled by the hands of the very heads they sacrificed. She called her apprentice. "Bring me a goat," she said. "What for?" "We must cleanse the chair before the chair claims us." Meanwhile, Ayaba regrouped. His team had moved underground, broadcasting from safe houses using hat signal towers. They called the campaign Operation Return the Bones. They traveled across the country, visiting families of those disappeared during past elections. They collected stories, tears, names, each one another nailed in the regime's spiritual coffin. "We will bury the lies," Ayaba said, "and raise the truths." And when they arrived in Makili, the site of the first state massacre in 1984, the land itself seemed to agree. Thunder rolled without clouds. A trail fell in the middle of their rally stage, but the people stayed. This time, they would not run. In Banga, the president prepared for his final campaign speech. His voice was hoarse. His legs barely held him. But the nation would watch. Behind the scenes, priests slaughtered a white cow. Generals planned crowd control. The First Lady wept beside a child that wouldn't stop coughing. But as he stepped onto the podium, something shifted. The microphones failed, the crowd murmured. A vulture landed on the flag beside him. He spoke anyway. "My people, I have served you." But the words didn't carry. In homes across Zingola, television blinked. In cafes, radios hissed. On phones, the live streams froze. The nation saw only one thing: the president standing still, his mouth moving, but no voice. It was as if the land had muted him, and then, in the distance, a chant rose. "7 heads no more! 7 heads no more!" In Zingola, when the leopard leans, the forest knows it has bled. President Diba Muwambe sat alone in the dark of the shrine of continuity. The flickering fire refused to rise no matter how many dry sticks the priest tossed in. The skulls were silent. The air, once thick with unseen things, now felt cold and abandoned. The ritual had failed. The seventh head, Tembe Ayaba, still breathed, and he had become a storm. Across Zingola, truth spilled like palm oil. Families of the disappeared began to speak. Former soldiers confessed anonymously in low-quality videos. A group of elderly women known as the Wailing Mothers marched bare-chested to the gates of the National Assembly, pouring ashes on the ground, shouting, "7 heads for 1 seat, let him eat alone." The ruling party called them witches, their people called them prophets. Far in the town of Zembele, where the sky always hung low, a spiritual awakening was brewing. Ayaba, under the guidance of his blind grandmother, called for a national cleansing, not with guns, but with voices, prayers, and dust. It was to be called the Day of Return, one that the entire country was to pause. No market, no work, no school. Every citizen, no matter how afraid, would wear white, light a candle, and speak the name of one person lost to the regime. Not to demand revenge, but to return the name stolen from memories. "We must remember them aloud," Ayaba said, "because forgotten is how monsters grow fat." The government laughed at first, then they panicked. Arrest doubled. Candles were confiscated from supermarkets. White clothing was declared symbolic terrorism. In response, the people began using other things: cassava flour on their faces, ash on their chest, thorn racks on their doors. "You can silence a trumpet," one elder said, "but not the wind." The day of return came, and Zingola stopped breathing. From the oil fields of Fombe to the cocoa farms of Ngwele, streets emptied. Mosques echoed with silence. Churches sang the names of the dead. Markets did not open. Bars stayed closed. Even prostitutes in Banga Red district stood by the roadside in solemn silence. And in the sky above Mbanga, 7 hawks circled the presidential palace. President Diba Muwambe collapsed during a security briefing. His mouth foamed. His fingers twitched. His eyes rolled like dice thrown by spirit. Doctors were summoned. Priests arrived. The military locked down the entire wing of the palace. But Mama Etongwe knew what had happened. "The skulls are returning," she said. "They have refused to sleep." That night, she too had a vision. She stood in a white savannah, naked, facing the 7 headless bodies. They had names now, names of real people: Father Belinga, Norawasa, Captain Kaye, Bunabe the student, Maya Esi, journalist Itofe, Baby Joliba. The child's head turned to her. "You fed us to him," he whispered. "Now feed him to us." She woke up screaming, bleeding from her ears. In the palace, Diba's voice returned, but it was not his. He spoke in riddles, tongues, in laughters. He asked for skulls. He begged for water, but when given, he spat it back black. His guards said he wept blood. His son, Colonel Sene, tried to take over, but was found unconscious with a broken spine at the base of the palace stair. The president was possessed, not by demons, but by his own depths.
They are in the curtains,
he whispered one morning.
They are chewing my ears.
Meanwhile, Ayaba moved for the final phase, a march of the living. It would be a peaceful protest, planned to walk from the University of Ndo to the gates of Parliament. Thousands had pledged to join. Students, mothers, retired soldiers, market women. They would carry 7 white coffins, empty, symbolizing the 7 heads. Their chant was simple: Zingola must breathe again. The government declared it an act of rebellion. General Ekoka issued an order: shoot if they move. But even the soldiers were now torn. Some left barracks, some leaked documents. One high-ranking colonel joined Ayaba, removing his uniform live on camera, saying, "I was trained to defend a nation, not throne made of skulls." The march began at dawn, 20,000 strong, a sea of white, slow but relentless, moving through the city like the return of the Nile. Children beat old drums, women carried palm leaves, some sang, some wept. And in the middle, Ayaba walked barefoot, holding a portrait of his father. One of the disappeared. They reached Freedom Square, just 2 blocks from the palace. Armed soldiers formed a barricade. The marcher stopped. Ayaba stepped forward and placed the first white coffin on the ground. Silence, then another and another. 7 in total. The officer in charge, young and shaking, raised his megaphone. He wanted to shout, to disperse them, to obey, but instead he wept. Behind him, one soldier dropped his rifle. Then another. Within minutes, the line collapsed. The army stepped aside. The crowd surged forward, not with violence, but the power of memory. At the gates of the palace, they chanted, "Let the dead speak!" Inside the presidential bedroom, the air turned thick. President Diba sat alone, the skulls now floating above his head, whispering, "You promised us peace. You promised to build our names in history. You used us for your crown." He tried to run, but his legs melted. He tried to scream, but his mouth filled with sand, and then silence. When the doors were finally forced open, they found him sitting upright, eyes open, heart still. On the wall behind him, 7 names had appeared in charcoal, and in his hand a single note written in trembling fingers: "I am the 8th." The dead was declared natural by state media, but no one believed it. Tembe Ayamba refused to run for president. "I am not here to replace a ghost with a saint," he said. "Zingola must never again be ruled by one man's shadow." The country moved forward. Slowly, the shrine of continuity was burned. A memorial was built, 7 pillars of light in green hollow, and every year on the anniversary of the March of the Living, the people gathered not to protest, but to dance, to speak the names, to remind each other, this land belongs to the living, not to skulls, not to secrets, not to fear. Because in Zingola, they say now, when you trade 7 heads for power, you forget that one day, yours will be the 8th.
Please subscribe to watch more of our videos. Thank you.